The Great Hall was silent. Everyone watched as Ambassador Kelrix walked to the front of the room. His wings were shaking. This was a bad sign for his species. When their wings shook like that, it meant they were scared or worried. Right now, Kelrix was both. Behind him, a large screen showed pictures and videos. The images were terrible. Entire planets burning, ships exploding in space, families running away from their homes. Cities that once held millions of people were now empty and destroyed. The enemy was winning, and everyone in the room knew it. The Galactic Council had representatives from 50 different species. They came from all across the galaxy. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and round. Some had fur. Others had scales. But today they all shared the same worried expression on their faces. They had all seen the reports. They all knew what was coming. Kelrix cleared his throat. The translation device on his chest hummed quietly. When he spoke, his words came out in every language at once. This was one of the great inventions of the galactic community. Everyone could understand everyone else, no matter what sounds they made. He began speaking. His voice was tired and sad. The members of the council, I come before you today not with pride, but with fear. The Krethok swarm has broken through our third line of defense. We have fought them for 10 months. We have lost hundreds of ships. Thousands of our best soldiers are dead, and still they keep coming. The screen behind him changed. Now it showed a map of space. Red dots marked where the Krethok were. Blue dots showed where the Zerathian forces were defending. There was much more red than blue. The red dots were getting closer and closer to the blue areas with each passing day. Our scientists have run the numbers, Kelrix continued. If things continue like this, we will lose everything in 3 standard cycles. That is about 90 days in Earth time. 90 days until my people have no home. 90 days until we are refugees scattered across the galaxy. I am not here to ask for help. I am here to beg for our survival. A tall being made of crystal stood up. This was Counselor Vren from the Manthari Collective. His people were known for being logical and practical. They did not make decisions based on emotions. They looked at facts and numbers. Right now the facts were not good. Ambassador Kelrix, Vren said in his echoing voice, we have already sent help. 6 member worlds have sent their fleets to fight alongside your forces. We have given you weapons and supplies. We have shared our tactical knowledge. What more can we possibly do? Kelrix looked down at the floor for a moment. When he looked up again, his eyes were wet. Those forces are brave and strong. They are fighting well, but they are not enough. The Krethok are too many, too organized, too efficient. Every tactic we try, they adapt to it within hours. Every trap we set, they avoid it. Every strategy we use, they counter it. We are fighting by the rules of war that have existed for thousands of years, and we are losing. Another council member spoke up. This one looked like a large turtle with 6 legs. What are you suggesting, Ambassador? Do you want us to break the rules of civilized warfare? Should we attack civilian targets? Should we use banned weapons? There are reasons we fight with honor. Kelrix shook his head quickly. No. I am not suggesting we abandon our values. I am suggesting we find warriors who think differently than we do. Warriors who do not follow the same patterns. Warriors who can surprise the Krethok in ways they cannot predict. He pressed a button and the screen changed again. Now it showed a small blue planet with white clouds and green land. Earth, the newest member of the galactic community. Most of the council members recognized it. Humans had only joined the galaxy 30 years ago. They were still learning about the wider universe. They had primitive technology compared to most species. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were weak. Why would Kelrix bring them up now? I am suggesting we ask the humans for help, Kelrix said. The room exploded with noise. Everyone started talking at once. The translation devices struggled to keep up with 50 different conversations happening at the same time. Some council members were laughing. Others were angry. A few looked confused. The chairman had to bang his wooden hammer on the desk 3 times before everyone became quiet again. The chairman looked at Kelrix with curiosity. The hammer he was using was actually a gift from humans. They called it a gavel. He found it very useful for getting attention during meetings. Ambassador, please explain your reasoning. The humans are barely capable of space travel. They have no significant military presence in the galaxy. Why would they be able to help when our combined fleets cannot? Kelrix pulled up a new video. It showed a human cargo ship. The ship looked old and worn. It was carrying mining equipment and building supplies. Nothing military about it at all. This vessel encountered a Krethok scout fleet 3 months ago near the Outer Rim territories. The scout fleet had 7 ships. The humans had 1 cargo vessel with no real weapons. He let that information sink in for a moment. Everyone in the room knew what happened when someone met a Krethok scout fleet without proper weapons. They died, quickly and completely. There was no shame in it. The Krethok were simply too strong. According to normal expectations, Kelrix continued, this human ship should have been destroyed in 5 minutes. But that is not what happened. The video began to play. Watch what they did instead. The council watched in amazement. The human ship did not try to run away in a straight line. It did not call for help and wait to be rescued. Instead, it flew directly into an asteroid field. The Krethok ships followed, confident in their pursuit. Then the humans did something crazy. They started releasing their cargo containers into space. Big metal boxes tumbled through the darkness. The Krethok ignored them. They were just cargo, not dangerous. Then the containers exploded. They were full of mining charges. The kind humans used to break apart asteroids when they were looking for minerals. The explosions were not powerful enough to destroy Krethok ships. But they broke apart the asteroids around them. Suddenly, the Krethok were flying through a field of deadly rocks moving at high speeds. 2 of their ships were damaged immediately. They had to slow down and change course, but the humans were not done. While the Krethok were distracted by the debris, the human ship did something else that made no sense. It vented all of its atmosphere into space. All of the air that the crew needed to breathe was pushed out of the ship in one direction. This created thrust in the opposite direction. The ship suddenly accelerated much faster than it should have been able to move. Then the humans used their construction lasers. These were tools meant for cutting metal and welding parts together during repairs. The humans turned them into weapons. The lasers were not very powerful. They would never penetrate Krethok armor under normal conditions. But the humans aimed them at the enemy sensors. They blinded the Krethok ships, made it impossible for them to track their target accurately. The final act was the most insane. The human ship turned around and flew directly at the closest Krethok vessel. It was going to ram them. The Krethok, confused and partially blind, tried to dodge. But the humans had calculated everything perfectly. They were not actually trying to hit the Krethok ship. They flew close enough to make the enemy panic and turn. And when the Krethok turned, they flew directly into a large asteroid. The impact destroyed the alien ship completely. The video ended. The human ship escaped with only minor damage. The Krethok scout fleet had lost 3 ships and retreated, and more importantly, they never came back to that sector. Our analysts studied this incident for weeks. They concluded that the Krethok were confused and uncertain about the humans. The tactics made no sense to them. They could not predict what the humans would do next. So they avoided that area of space entirely. Vren spoke again, his crystal body reflecting the light in thoughtful patterns. That sounds more like desperation and luck than actual strategy. Perhaps it was luck, Kelrix admitted. But it worked. And that is what matters. The humans did not follow our rules of engagement. They did not use approved tactics. They improvised. They adapted. They used whatever tools they had in whatever way would help them survive. Our analysts have a term for this. They call it creative problem solving. Humans do not think in straight lines. They think in curves and circles and sometimes in directions we cannot even understand. The room was quiet now. Everyone was thinking about what they had just seen. The chairman leaned forward in his seat. You are asking us to bring unpredictable warriors into the most important military operation in our recent history. Warriors who might do anything. Warriors who do not follow our rules or respect our traditions. Yes, Kelrix said simply, because predictable warriors are losing. Traditional tactics are failing. If we keep doing what we have always done, we will get the same results. And those results mean the death of my species. I need humans. We all need humans. Whether we want to admit it or not, the debate lasted for hours. Some council members were strongly opposed to the idea. Others were curious. A few were desperate enough to try anything. In the end, they took a vote. The motion passed, but barely. It was one of the closest votes in council history. They would send a formal request to Earth. They would ask humanity to send military advisors and support units to the front lines. What the humans would want in return was unknown. What? General Lisa Morgan stood in front of the large screen in the Pentagon briefing room. The room was deep underground, protected by thick concrete and advanced security systems. Around the long table sat the most powerful military leaders in the United States. They had been watching the alien transmission for the past 6 hours, watching it over and over again, trying to understand exactly what was being asked of them. Admiral Carl Jensen rubbed his tired eyes. He had not slept well in 2 days. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. An alien civilization that has technology about 10,000 years ahead of ours is asking us for help because they are losing a war. Does that sound as crazy to everyone else as it does to me? It does sound crazy, General Morgan agreed. But it is real. The Zorathians are desperate. They have tried everything they know how to do. Nothing is working. The enemy adapts too quickly to their strategies.
So they are looking for something different.
Something unexpected. They are looking for us. Air Force General Peter Davis was studying tactical displays on his tablet. He had spent the morning analyzing everything the aliens had shared about the enemy. The Krethok fight in very organized patterns. Their movements are precise. Their tactics are efficient. Everything they do follows clear military doctrine. Once you understand their system, they are actually quite predictable. So why are they winning? Asked Marine Corps Commandant Susan Blake. She was the youngest person at the table, but she had more combat experience than anyone else in the room. Because the Zorathians fight the same way, Davis explained. Both sides follow the same rules. They both use similar tactics. They both believe in the same principles of warfare. It is like two chess players who have memorized every possible move. The Krethok are simply better at playing the game. They make fewer mistakes. They adapt faster. They have better resources. Morgan nodded slowly. And that is exactly why we might be able to help. We do not play chess the same way they do. We developed our military strategies in complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Nobody taught us how we were supposed to fight. We figured it out ourselves over thousands of years of human warfare. And human warfare has always been about one thing above all else. Survival. Blake said quietly. Exactly. We never had the luxury of fighting fair. When survival was at stake, humans did whatever worked. We ambushed enemies from hiding. We used deception and lies. We attacked supply lines instead of armies. We fought dirty when we had to because dying honorably was still dying. Morgan pulled up historical records on the screen. Images from ancient battles, medieval sieges, guerrilla warfare in jungles, urban combat in destroyed cities, tank battles across deserts. Every kind of human conflict was represented. The Zorathians announce their presence before attacking. They engage in open combat. They follow strict rules about what weapons are acceptable and what tactics are honorable. It is all very civilized, very predictable. But humans have never fought that way, Jensen said, beginning to understand where she was going with this. Never. When we needed to win, we did whatever it took. We hid in forests and picked off enemy patrols. We pretended to retreat and then ambushed pursuers. We spread false information to confuse enemy commanders. We attacked at night when they expected us to rest. We set traps and used terrain to our advantage. Every war taught us new tricks, new ways to surprise the enemy, new methods to overcome stronger opponents. Davis leaned back in his chair and smiled. You want to teach the aliens about asymmetric warfare, about guerrilla tactics, about psychological operations and strategic deception. I want to show the Krethok what happens when they face an enemy that does not follow their rules. An enemy that attacks from unexpected directions using unexpected methods. An enemy that treats war not as a game with rules but as a problem to be solved by any means necessary. Blake crossed her arms. This could work, or it could completely destroy our reputation in the galactic community. The aliens might see our tactics as dishonorable, uncivilized. They might decide we are too dangerous to have as allies. That is a risk, Morgan admitted. But consider what we gain if this works. Right now, humanity is the new kid in the galaxy. We are interesting but not important. Our technology is primitive. Our territory is small. Nobody takes us seriously as a military power. But if we help the Zorathians win this war, everything changes. We prove that we have value, that we bring something unique to the galaxy. We become partners instead of curiosities, and we learn from them, Jensen added. We get access to their technology, their knowledge, their history. That alone is worth the risk. Morgan waited while the others thought about it. She could see them weighing the risks and benefits. This was not an easy decision. Sending human forces to fight in an alien war was unprecedented. There were so many things that could go wrong. But there were also so many opportunities if they succeeded. Finally, Jensen spoke. "What is your recommendation, General?" "What exactly would we send?" "A task force, not our entire fleet. We need to keep most of our forces here to defend Earth. But we send enough ships to make a real difference. I am thinking 3 carriers that we converted from colony ships. Each one carries fighters and support craft. 6 frigates for escort and combat support. 1 command cruiser where our senior officers can coordinate operations. Total personnel would be around 1,500 military and support staff." "That is a significant commitment," Davis said. "What about command structure? Who leads this operation?" Morgan had been thinking about this question since the message arrived. "For overall command, I recommend myself. I will coordinate with Earth and handle diplomatic relations with the aliens. But for tactical operations, for the actual fighting, I want Commander Jake Sullivan." Blake whistled softly. "Sullivan, are you serious? The man is brilliant, but he is also completely unpredictable. He breaks regulations constantly. His methods are unconventional to the point of being bizarre sometimes." Morgan smiled. "Exactly. That is exactly why I want him. The aliens asked for unconventional. They asked for unpredictable. Commander Sullivan is the most creative tactical officer in our entire military. He thinks in ways that surprise even other humans. He sees solutions that nobody else considers. He wins battles that other commanders would lose, and he does it by being completely impossible to predict. He also drives his superiors crazy," Jensen muttered. "But he gets results. I cannot argue with his record. Personnel selection is critical for this mission," Morgan continued. "We need people who can think creatively under pressure. Veterans with experience in special operations. People who have proven they can adapt to unexpected situations. No rigid by-the-book officers for this mission. We need fighters who understand that the mission is more important than the manual." Davis pulled up a personnel roster. "I can have a list of candidates ready within 24 hours. We should include people from all branches. Navy for ship operations, Marines for boarding actions and ground support, Air Force for fighter tactics, even some Army personnel for strategic planning." "This needs to be a joint operation," agreed, Morgan said. "We also need to brief everyone carefully. They need to understand that this is not a normal military operation. We are not going there to follow alien rules. We are going there to show them that rules can be broken, that creativity beats efficiency, that humans fight differently, and that difference is our strength." The group spent the next hour discussing logistics and planning. They talked about supplies and communication protocols, about how to coordinate with alien forces who thought very differently than humans, about backup plans if things went wrong, about what to do if the aliens rejected their methods. Finally, it was time to vote. This decision required unanimous approval from the Joint Chiefs. Morgan looked at each person around the table. Jensen nodded first, then Davis, then Blake. One by one, they all agreed. The mission was approved. "We are doing this," Jensen said. "We are sending humans to fight in an alien war using tactics that will probably shock everyone involved. This is either the smartest decision we have ever made or the biggest mistake in military history." Morgan stood up. "The decision is made. Now we need to move fast. I want the task force ready to depart in 72 hours. Get the ships prepared. Select the personnel, brief Commander Sullivan, and somebody needs to send a message back to the Galactic Council." "What should the message say?" Davis asked. Morgan thought for a moment. "Keep it simple. Tell them we received their request. Tell them we are sending help. Tell them to prepare for the arrival of human forces. And then add one more line." "What line?" "Tell them that humans do not lose. Not when survival is at stake. We are coming. And we are bringing everything that makes us human. Our creativity, our adaptability, our refusal to give up no matter how bad things look. The Krethok have never faced anything like us before. They are about to get an education in human warfare. And that education starts the moment we arrive." Blake smiled. "That sounds almost like a threat." "It is not a threat," Morgan replied. "It is a promise. The aliens asked for support. They are going to get shock and awe. They are going to get chaos and creativity. They are going to get tactics that break every rule of civilized warfare. They asked for humans. Well, they are about to find out what that really means." The meeting ended. Orders were sent out. Ships were prepared. Personnel were. Commander Jake Sullivan watched the view screen as the Zorathian defense station grew larger. The station was massive, built to house thousands of military personnel and hundreds of ships. It floated in space like a small moon, covered in weapons and sensor arrays. Behind his ship came the rest of the human task force. 7 vessels total, spread out in a formation that made no sense to anyone trained in traditional space warfare. Communications Officer Katie Ross looked up from her console. "Sir, we are getting multiple messages from the station. They seem worried about our formation. They are asking if we are having problems with our navigation systems." Sullivan smiled. "Tell them our formation is exactly what we intended. We spread out like this to make it harder for enemies to target all of us at once. It also makes it difficult to predict where we will go next." Katie listened to her headset for a moment. "They are saying that this kind of formation goes against standard fleet protocols. They say it increases the risk of ships accidentally firing on each other. Tell them we appreciate their concern, but we will continue as planned." They asked for humans. They are about to learn what that means. The human fleet docked at the station without incident, though Sullivan could tell the alien controllers were nervous. They kept asking questions about human procedures and protocols. They wanted to know what the humans would do in various situations. Sullivan gave them vague answers. Better to keep them guessing. Unpredictability was a weapon all by itself. Ambassador Kelrix himself came to greet the humans. Sullivan had seen pictures of Zorathians before, but meeting one in person was different. The alien was tall and thin, with large wings folded against his back. His skin was a pale blue color that seemed to glow slightly under the station lights. When he spoke, a small device on his chest translated his words into English. "Commander Sullivan, welcome to Forward Station 7. On behalf of my people and the Coalition, I thank you for coming. Your presence here gives us hope. However, I must admit some confusion about your fleet tactics. Your formation appears disorganized. Your approach vector was irregular. Is this normal for human military operations?" Sullivan extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. Kelrix hesitated, then reached out with his own thin fingers. The handshake was awkward but friendly. "It is normal for us, Ambassador. Chaos is difficult to predict. When you cannot predict something, you cannot easily counter it. We like to keep our enemies guessing, and sometimes we like to keep our allies guessing too." Kelrix led the human officers to the command center. The room was huge, filled with displays showing tactical information from across the war zone. Dozens of alien officers worked at various stations, monitoring enemy movements and coordinating defensive operations. Everything looked efficient and organized. Too organized, in Sullivan's opinion. War was messy. These aliens tried to make it neat and tidy. "Please observe our current situation," Kelrix said, gesturing to the main display. "The red markers show Krethok forces. The blue markers are Coalition defensive positions. As you can see, we are heavily outnumbered." Lieutenant Commander Alex Price, Sullivan's tactical officer, studied the display carefully. He had been in the Navy for 15 years and had a gift for understanding battle situations quickly. The Krethok are advancing in a standard pattern, 3 main thrust lines supported by screening forces on the flanks. Very methodical, very efficient. Major Chris Walker, who commanded the Marine contingent, pointed at the Coalition forces. "And you are defending using layered positions, fighting withdrawals when necessary, trying to inflict maximum damage while preserving your own forces. Classic defensive warfare." "Yes," Kelrix confirmed. "We have been following these strategies for months. They minimize our losses and slow the enemy advance. Unfortunately, they do not stop it. The Krethok simply adapt to whatever we do. They learn our patterns and counter them." Sullivan was barely listening to the tactical discussion. He was watching battle recordings from previous engagements. The Krethok moved like machines. Every ship knew its role. Every formation was perfect. Their coordination was beautiful in a cold, mathematical way. They fought war like it was a science. Measure the variables, calculate the optimal response, execute with precision. The problem was obvious to him. The Zorathians fought the same way. Both sides were playing the same game. The Krethok were just better players. They had better pieces on the board, more resources, faster adaptation. In a fair fight following the rules, the Krethok would always win. "So we will not fight fair," Sullivan said out loud. The room became quiet. Several Zorathian officers looked at him with confusion. Kelrix tilted his head, a gesture that seemed to indicate uncertainty. "I do not understand, Commander." "What do you mean?" Sullivan turned to face the ambassador. "You are losing because you fight by the rules. You follow proper military doctrine. You use approved tactics. You engage in honorable combat. The Krethok do the same thing. They just do it better. But humans do not always follow the rules, especially not in war. One of the Zarathian officers stepped forward. He wore markings that indicated high rank. Commander Sullivan, I hope you understand the seriousness of this situation. This is not a training exercise. The Krethok will destroy any force that opposes them. While we appreciate your confidence, perhaps you should observe our standard operations before implementing your own ideas. Sullivan looked the officer directly in the eyes. With all respect, your standard operations are why you are losing. You asked Earth for help. That means you get human tactics. And I can promise you that the Krethok have never seen anything like what we are about to do. He walked to the main display and pulled up the star chart showing current battle lines. The Krethok main force is pushing toward your shipyards in Sector 7, correct? Yes, Kelrix confirmed. If they capture those facilities, we lose our ability to build new ships. The war ends within weeks after that. Good. Then that is where we will strike them. Strike them? Kelrix's wings trembled. Commander, the Krethok force heading for Sector 7 consists of 47 capital ships and hundreds of support vessels. You have 7 ships. An attack would be suicide. We need you to help defend the sector, not throw away your forces in a hopeless assault. Sullivan shook his head. An attack would be unexpected. They are prepared for you to defend. They have plans for a defensive engagement. They do not have plans for a human strike force to hit them from an angle they are not watching, using tactics they have never encountered. That is what we call shock and awe, Ambassador. We hit them hard. We hit them fast. We hit them in ways they cannot predict, and we do it before they understand what is happening. Price pulled up technical data on the Krethok fleet composition. Sir, even with surprise on our side, the numbers are heavily against us. We would need multiple things to go right simultaneously. Then we make multiple things go right, Sullivan replied. We do not need to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to disrupt them, confuse them, make them question their own tactical assessments. The Krethok rely on their ability to predict and counter enemy actions. If we can make ourselves unpredictable enough, if we can create enough chaos, they will not know how to respond. Walker was grinning now. The Marine had been in enough desperate situations to appreciate unconventional thinking. You want to fight dirty? Use every trick in the book. And probably invent some new tricks they have never seen before. Exactly. The Krethok are efficient, organized, logical. Those are strengths in most situations. But they are also weaknesses. Efficient systems do not handle chaos well. Organized forces struggle when disorder is introduced. Logical thinking fails when confronted with actions that make no sense. Kelrix looked at his own officers. They seemed uncertain. Everything Sullivan was saying went against their training and experience. But they were also desperate. Conventional warfare had failed them. Maybe it was time to try something different. Commander Sullivan, if we agree to this plan, what exactly do you need from us? First, I need you to trust us. Our methods will seem strange, maybe even reckless, but they work. Second, I need detailed intelligence on the Krethok fleet. Their exact positions, their sensor capabilities, their communication protocols, everything you know about how they operate. Third, I need your forces ready to exploit any opportunity we create. When we disrupt the enemy, you need to hit them hard while they are confused. The Zarathian high-ranking officer spoke again. And if your plan fails? If the Krethok destroy your ships, we lose the only force that might be able to help us think differently. If our plan fails, you are no worse off than you are now. Sullivan said bluntly, you are already losing. You have already tried everything else. What do you have to lose by trying something completely different? The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Kelrix spread his wings wide. It was a gesture of decision among his people. Very well, Commander Sullivan. We will support your plan. Zorathian forces will be ready to assist when you engage the enemy. But please understand, if this goes wrong, it will not just be your lives at risk. The fate of my entire species hangs in the balance. Sullivan nodded seriously. I understand, Ambassador, and I promise you this. When humans go to war, we do not plan to lose. We will hit the Krethok with everything we have. We will show them what it means to fight an enemy that refuses to follow. The Krethok fleet commander studied the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The Zorathian defenders had established positions around the shipyard complex, exactly as predicted. Coalition forces were following standard defensive doctrine. Their formations were proper. Their responses were appropriate. Another 72 hours of sustained pressure would break through their lines. Victory was mathematically certain. Then something appeared on the sensors that did not fit any known pattern. 7 vessels approaching from an unexpected angle. Not toward the defensive line where they should be, not from any strategic position. They were approaching the Krethok fleet from the side, from a direction that made no tactical sense. The tactical computer analyzed the new contacts, human vessels according to the Galactic database. Small force, 7 ships against 47 Krethok capital ships. The computer calculated their chance of success. 0.003%, essentially impossible. The commander processed this information. Perhaps the humans were lost. Perhaps this was some kind of reconnaissance mission. Perhaps they did not understand the danger they were in. The commander decided to ignore them for now. They could be dealt with after the primary objective was secured. That decision would prove to be a mistake. Sullivan stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the Krethok fleet on the view screen. The enemy ships were beautiful in their own way, perfectly arranged, moving in precise formations, everything organized and efficient. It was like watching a well-oiled machine operate. And machines, Sullivan knew, could be broken. They are starting to respond to our approach, Price reported from his tactical station. Moving ships from their primary assault formation to intercept us. They are forming a defensive screen. Perfect. Katie, activate our psychological warfare package. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let us introduce ourselves properly. The communications officer pressed several buttons. Immediately, human transmissions flooded every communication channel the Krethok were using. Loud music from Earth, recordings of historical battle speeches, random quotations from military history spoken in different languages, fragments of poetry and song mixed with tactical gibberish. None of it made any sense. That was exactly the point. The Krethok tactical computers tried to process the incoming data. They analyzed the transmissions looking for hidden messages or coded instructions. But there were no hidden messages. It was just noise, chaos, confusion. And it forced the Krethok to dedicate processing power to analyzing meaningless information. Every second they spent trying to understand the transmissions was a second they were not perfectly coordinating their defenses. Launch fighters, Sullivan ordered. Execute Operation Chaos. The human carriers opened their launch bays. Small fighter craft poured out into space like angry hornets from a disturbed nest. But they did not form up into neat squadrons. They scattered in every direction. Some dove straight toward the Krethok capital ships. Others flew toward empty space for no apparent reason. A few seemed to be fleeing in panic. Then they suddenly turned and attacked from completely different angles. Each human pilot was following their own individual plan. There was no unified strategy, no coordinated attack pattern. Each pilot made their own decisions about where to fly and when to shoot. The Krethok tactical computers tried to predict fighter movements and failed. There was no pattern to predict. The humans were not following doctrine because they did not have a single unified doctrine to follow. Anti-fighter defenses opened fire. Some of the human fighters were hit and destroyed, but many more survived because their movements were completely random. The Krethok targeting systems were designed to predict where a target would be based on where it had been, but the human pilots kept changing direction for no logical reason. They were difficult to hit because they themselves did not know where they were going next. They are adapting faster than expected, Price warned. The Krethok defensive fire is becoming more accurate. They are learning to compensate for random movements. Then it is time for Phase 2, Sullivan said calmly. All frigates deploy the garbage. The human frigates opened their cargo bays. Thousands of objects flooded into space. Spent fuel containers, broken equipment, actual waste from the ship's recycling systems, sensor-reflective chaff that military forces use to confuse targeting systems, chunks of metal with no purpose except to clutter up space. All of it tumbled through the darkness in seemingly random patterns. The Krethok sensors were suddenly overwhelmed. Their sophisticated detection systems could not distinguish between real threats and floating debris. Fighter craft became nearly invisible amid the chaos. Targeting computers struggled to lock onto anything. The organized Krethok fleet was now operating partially blind in a field of junk. But that was just the distraction. While the Krethok fleet focused on the apparent chaos above them, 3 human ships quietly maneuvered into position below the enemy formation. They had been running silent, pretending to be debris, waiting for exactly the right moment. Sullivan checked the tactical display one more time. Everything was in position. All ships execute sledgehammer. Go, go, go. The 3 ships that had been hiding in the debris field activated their engines simultaneously. They accelerated upward, directly into the underside of the Krethok formation. But they were not planning to fight. They were planning to blind. Each ship released its special cargo. Mining charges normally used for breaking apart asteroids. Humans used these charges to extract minerals from rock in space. But the humans had modified them, enhanced their yield, added sensor triggers so they would detonate at exactly the right moment. The charges scattered through the enemy formation like seeds blown by wind. Then they all detonated at once. The explosions were not powerful enough to destroy capital ships. That was never the goal. The mining charges had been modified to produce massive electromagnetic pulses. Waves of electromagnetic energy washed over the Krethok fleet. Sensors went dark. Communications failed. Targeting systems shut down. For 90 seconds, the entire Krethok fleet was effectively blind and deaf. 90 seconds was all the Zorathian defenders needed. The coalition forces had been waiting for this moment, following the battle plan that Sullivan had shared with them. Not their traditional defensive doctrine. Not the safe, honorable tactics they had always used. Instead, they were following human advice. Strike hard at vulnerable targets. Ignore honor protocols. Hit the enemy while they are confused and cannot coordinate their defense. Zorathian ships dove into the disorganized Krethok formation. They targeted damaged vessels. They exploited gaps in the defensive screen. They attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. For the first time in months of warfare, the Zorathians were not fighting fair. They were fighting to win. The Krethok fleet took devastating losses in those 90 seconds. Ships collided with each other because their navigation systems were offline. Others were hit by Zorathian weapons before their defensive shields could reactivate. The perfect coordination that made the Krethok so dangerous fell apart when they could not communicate with each other. When the electromagnetic interference finally cleared, the tactical situation had completely reversed. The Krethok fleet had lost 15 capital ships. Dozens more were damaged. Their neat formation was scattered across space. And worst of all, they were now facing an enemy that was not afraid to exploit their weakness. The Krethok commander faced a decision it had never expected to make. Every calculation said to continue the attack. The mathematics still favored Krethok victory, but the mathematics did not account for human unpredictability. The commander did not know what the humans would do next, could not predict their next move, and that uncertainty was something the Krethok had never experienced before. For the first time in the entire war, a Krethok commander ordered a retreat. Not a fighting withdrawal, not a tactical repositioning, an actual retreat. Individual ships began pulling back, making their own decisions about survival. The perfect Krethok coordination was gone, replaced by something the Krethok did not usually experience. Fear. On Sullivan's Bridge, everyone watched in amazement as the enemy fleet scattered. Katie looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Sir, they are running. All of them. The Zorathian forces are reporting that the Krethok are in full retreat. This has never happened before in the entire war." "Good," Sullivan said calmly. "Now let us make sure they remember this lesson. All ships pursuit course. Do not let them regroup. Keep hitting them. Keep them off balance. Keep them scared." Walker, who had been watching from the tactical station, grinned widely. "I do not think scared is something the Krethok have ever felt before today. They have now. Welcome to human warfare. We do not fight fair. We do not follow the rules. We use every advantage we can find and invent new advantages when we need to. The Krethok came here expecting to fight Zorathians. Instead, they got humans. And humans are very good at making war messy and confusing and completely unpredictable. The pursuit lasted for 6 hours. Human and Zorathian forces harried the retreating Krethok fleet, never letting them stop to reorganize, never giving them a chance to catch their breath and regroup. The Krethok kept expecting the pursuit to end, kept waiting for the enemy to follow proper doctrine and allow for an... The weeks following the Battle of Sector 7 changed everything. Not just for the Zorathians, not just for the war, but for the entire galaxy. News of what happened spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. Species that had never heard of humans were suddenly very interested in learning more about these strange warriors from Earth. The Krethok, for their part, were confused and uncertain. They had tried to adapt to human tactics. After the defeat at Sector 7, they studied the battle recordings carefully. They updated their tactical computers with new parameters. They prepared for another engagement with human forces. But when that engagement came, the humans did something completely different. Sullivan and his team hit the Krethok in 6 different locations over 2 weeks. Each attack used different methods. In one battle, they pretended to flee, drawing Krethok forces into a trap. In another, they used gravity wells from nearby planets to slingshot their ships to unexpected speeds. Once they hacked into Krethok communications and sent false orders that created chaos in enemy formations. Every engagement brought new surprises. The Krethok could not adapt because there was nothing consistent to adapt to. The humans were not following a new doctrine. They were improvising constantly, making up tactics on the spot based on whatever situation they found themselves in. It was warfare as creative expression rather than scientific calculation. And the Zorathians were learning, not just how to fight like humans, but how to think like humans. Their officers started questioning assumptions, started looking for unconventional solutions, started asking what if instead of following established procedures. The change was slow but undeniable. The entire coalition military was being transformed by exposure to human methods. 2 months after the first engagement, something unprecedented happened. The Krethok sent a diplomatic message, not to the Zorathians, to Earth. They wanted to negotiate, to discuss terms, to end the war. The message was analyzed by human diplomats and military leaders. Everyone was skeptical at first. The Krethok had been winning before humans arrived. Why would they suddenly want peace? But as intelligence reports came in, the answer became clear. The Krethok were not just stopping their offensive, they were withdrawing from occupied territories, pulling back to their original borders, offering reparations for damage caused. It was not just a peace offer, it was a surrender. Ambassador Kelrix stood once again before the Galactic Council, but this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of fear and desperation, there was celebration. Instead of worried faces, there were expressions of relief and joy. The war that had seemed unwinnable was over. The Krethok had retreated. The threat was gone. Members of the council, Kelrix began, his voice strong and confident now. I stand before you today to announce that the Krethok conflict has ended. After 11 months of warfare, after countless losses and desperate struggles, peace has been achieved. And we all know why. He activated the holographic display. Images of human combat operations played across the screens. Fighter craft moving in chaotic patterns. Ships releasing debris clouds. Psychological warfare broadcasts. Attacks from impossible angles. Every tactic looked wild and uncontrolled. And every tactic had worked. The humans changed everything. They did not bring superior technology. They did not bring overwhelming numbers. What they brought was something far more powerful. They brought a completely different way of thinking about warfare. They showed us that rules are not sacred, that honor can be a weakness if your enemy does not share your values, that creativity and unpredictability can defeat superior force and better organization. Counselor Vren, the crystal being from the Menthari collective, raised a point of concern. Ambassador Kelrix, many of the tactics employed by human forces would be considered dishonorable by our traditional standards. They attacked infrastructure that was not military targets. They used deception and misinformation. They engaged in psychological warfare designed to terrorize enemy forces. Should we be celebrating methods that violate our principles of civilized combat? Kelrix's wings spread wide, a gesture of strong emotion among his people. Counselor, my homeworld still exists because of those methods. My children will grow up free because humans were willing to do what we were not. We were losing because we limited ourselves to honorable defeat. The humans showed us that survival is more important than honor, that protecting your people matters more than following rules that your enemy ignores. The chamber was quiet. Many council members looked uncomfortable. They had spent their entire lives believing that civilized species followed certain rules of warfare. that there were limits to what was acceptable even in battle. The humans had ignored all of those limits. And won. Another council member spoke up. This one was from a species that looked like a large insect with multiple arms. What do the humans want in exchange for their assistance? They could demand significant concessions. We would have no choice but to agree. Kelrix pulled up a document. The formal request from Earth. I have the list of human requests here. First, they want full membership in the Galactic Council with voting rights equal to any other member species. Second, they want access to our educational institutions. They wish to send students to learn from our accumulated knowledge and history. Third, they want permission to establish training facilities where they can teach interested species their military methods. Friends sounded surprised. They want to train other species in their chaotic tactics? They want to spread their unconventional methods throughout the galaxy? Yes, they call it asymmetric warfare training, and I must inform the Council that several species have already expressed strong interest, including my own. The Zarathian military academies are already working with human advisors to incorporate these new methods into our curriculum. The humans have proven that unconventional thinking is not just effective, it is sometimes necessary for survival. The debate lasted for hours. Some council members worried about giving humans too much influence. Others argued that Earth had earned its place through action. A few pointed out that refusing human requests would be both ungrateful and strategically foolish. In the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity received everything they requested and more. Earth was granted full council membership with all associated rights and privileges. Human students were welcomed at prestigious galactic universities. And most significantly, humans were authorized to establish military training programs across coalition space. Within months, the first human military academy opened on a Zarathian world. Within a year, there were 12 such academies across 8 different species territories. The galaxy was changing. Species that had fought wars the same way for thousands of years were learning new methods. Young officers were being taught to question assumptions, to look for unexpected solutions, to value creativity as much as discipline. The humans had not just won a war, they had started a revolution in military thinking. Back on Earth, General Morgan watched news reports about humanity's success with quiet satisfaction. She stood in her office overlooking the expanded military complex. New buildings were being constructed to train personnel for galactic service. New ships were being designed based on lessons learned from alien technology. Humanity was growing into its new role. Admiral Jensen entered her office carrying a tablet full of reports. Do you think we have opened a dangerous door? Teaching aliens how to fight without following rules? What happens when those lessons are used against us? Morgan turned from the window. We have not taught them how to fight without rules. We have taught them how to think creatively, how to adapt, how to survive when conventional methods fail. Those lessons work both ways. As other species learn from us, we learn from them. We share knowledge of their technology, their history, their perspectives. It makes all of us stronger. And if someone decides to use those lessons against humanity, then we will do what humans have always done. We will adapt. We will improvise. We will find new tactics that nobody expects. The thing about human creativity is that it never stops. We never run out of new ideas. By the time other species master the methods we taught them, we will have moved on to something else, something they cannot predict. Jensen smiled. Evolution never stops. Adapt or die. Exactly. And humans are very, very good at adapting. We spent thousands of years learning that lesson on Earth. Fighting each other taught us to be creative, to think in new ways, to never stop innovating. Now we take those lessons to the galaxy, and the galaxy becomes a more interesting place because of it. She pulled up a star map on her display. 30 years ago we were alone. Just one planet, one species, isolated and unaware of the larger universe. Today we are teachers, partners, allies to civilizations that are thousands of years older than us. We went from complete isolation to galactic significance in less than a human lifetime. That is remarkable. Jensen looked at the map. All those worlds, all those species, and they are learning from us. The new kids who barely understand how to travel between stars are teaching ancient civilizations how to fight. It sounds absurd when you say it out loud. It sounds absurd because it is absurd, Morgan agreed. But it is also true. We brought something to the galaxy that they had lost, or never had. The ability to think outside. 6 months had passed since the end of the war. Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of his ship, preparing for the journey home to Earth. Around him, his crew worked efficiently at their stations. They had become legends in the short time they had been in galactic space. The humans who fought with chaos and creativity, the warriors who refused to lose, the species that changed warfare forever. Outside the viewscreen, a fleet of Zorathian ships floated in formation. They were there as an honor guard, to escort the human forces back toward their home system, to show respect for the allies who had saved them when all hope seemed lost. It was unprecedented in Zorathian culture. They did not usually honor foreign military forces. But then again, humans were not a usual military force. Katie Ross looked up from her communications console. Sir Ambassador Kelrix is requesting a final meeting before we depart. He is asking if you can meet him on the station one more time. Sullivan nodded. Tell him I will be there within the hour. Also send a message to the rest of the fleet. All personnel are granted station leave for the next 12 hours. They have earned some time to say goodbye to friends they made here. An hour later, Sullivan met Kelrix in a quiet observation room overlooking the planet below. The Zorathian homeworld was beautiful from orbit. Blue oceans and green continents, white clouds drifting across the surface. It looked peaceful now. Hard to believe that 6 months ago, this world had been under threat of invasion and destruction. Commander Sullivan, Kelrix said as they stood together watching the planet. I wanted to speak with you personally before you departed, to thank you properly, not just as an ambassador, but as someone whose family is alive because of what you and your people did. Sullivan shook his head slightly. We just did what we do best. We fought in the only way we know how, with everything we had, using every trick we could think of. Nothing special from a human perspective, but that is exactly what made it special. You did not try to be like us. You did not attempt to follow our traditions or match our expectations. You brought your own methods, your own thinking, your own approach to warfare, and in doing so you showed us something we had forgotten, that there is more than one way to solve a problem. That innovation matters more than tradition when survival is at stake. The Zorathian turned from the window to face Sullivan directly. When I first proposed asking humans for help, many members of the council thought I was insane. They saw Earth as a primitive world, humans as barely civilized newcomers. Your technology was thousands of years behind ours. Your military was tiny compared to galactic standards. Why would we ask you for help? But I had studied that incident with your cargo ship and the Krethok scouts. I saw something in that battle recording that gave me hope. What did you see? Sullivan asked. I saw humans who refused to give up even when logic said they should, who looked at impossible odds and said we will find a way anyway, who used mining equipment as weapons because weapons were what they needed. That kind of thinking, that refusal to accept limitations, that is something we had lost. We became so focused on doing things correctly that we forgot how to just do things that work. Sullivan smiled slightly. That sounds like the best description of human nature I have ever heard from an alien. We are terrible at following instructions, excellent at making things up as we go along, and that quality saved my species. Kelrix's wings spread wide in a gesture of deep emotion. The Krethok were beating us because they were better at following the rules than we were. You won because you refused to acknowledge that rules existed. You made your own rules, changed them whenever you needed to. That flexibility, that creativity is something the galaxy desperately needed to see. Have you heard from the Krethok? Sullivan asked. Any explanation for why they sued for peace so quickly? We have. They were remarkably honest in their communications. They said that fighting humans was impossible to prepare for, that every tactical model they built was invalidated by human unpredictability. They could not predict what you would do because you yourselves did not know what you would do, until the moment came. That uncertainty broke their strategic planning completely. They concluded that continuing the war was statistically futile. Sullivan laughed quietly. They gave up because we confused them too much. That might be the most human victory in history. It was more than confusion. It was recognition that their entire approach to warfare had a fatal weakness. They relied on being able to predict and counter enemy actions. When they faced an enemy that could not be predicted, their whole system fell apart. You exposed that weakness, and in doing so you changed how warfare will be conducted across the galaxy for centuries to come. Kelrix pulled up a data display showing military academy enrollments. Look at this. Applications to human-led training programs have increased 300% in the last 2 months. Species from across the galaxy want to learn your methods. Young officers who spent years learning traditional tactics are now questioning everything they were taught. You have started a revolution in military thinking. Is that a good thing? Sullivan asked seriously. We taught the galaxy how to fight dirty, how to ignore honor and tradition. What happens when those lessons are turned against innocent people? A valid concern. But I believe you taught us something more important than just tactics. You taught us to think for ourselves, to question assumptions, to look for creative solutions instead of just following established procedures. Those lessons apply to more than just warfare. They apply to science, diplomacy, governance, everything. You have made the galaxy more adaptable, more resilient, better able to face unexpected challenges. Sullivan watched the planet below. Cities that were almost destroyed now rebuilding. People who had been refugees returning to their homes. Children who would grow up in peace instead of war. That is what mattered. Not the methods used, not the rules broken, but the lives saved. The futures preserved. What will you do now? Kelrix asked. Return to Earth and resume normal duties? For a while. My crew deserves rest. They have been operating at maximum stress for months. But I think Earth will send more missions into galactic space. We have proven ourselves. Other species will want to work with us now. And honestly, I think humans are addicted to exploration and challenge. We will not stay home for long. I hope you are right. The galaxy is better with humans in it. You bring chaos, yes, but you also bring hope. The hope that impossible problems can be solved. That creativity can overcome superior force. That thinking differently is not just acceptable but valuable. We need that perspective. Perhaps we have always needed it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the planet turn slowly below them. Finally, Sullivan spoke again. Ambassador, can I ask you something? When you first proposed bringing humans into this war, were you confident it would work? Or were you just desperate enough to try anything? Kelrix made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. Honest answer? I was absolutely terrified. I had no idea if human tactics would work on a larger scale. That cargo ship incident could have been pure luck, for all I knew. Bringing humans into the war would just waste resources and get your people killed. But I was watching my civilization die. Sometimes when you are desperate enough, you take crazy risks. You bet everything on an idea that probably will not work, because the alternative is accepting defeat. Sounds very human to me, Sullivan said with a smile, making desperate gambles and hoping for the best. Perhaps that is why it worked. Perhaps desperation and creativity go together. When you have nothing to lose, you are free to try anything. And trying anything is exactly what humans excel at. Sullivan extended his hand again. Goodbye, Ambassador. Thank you for taking that crazy risk, for believing that humans might have something to offer, even though we were primitive by galactic standards. You changed the course of human history. Before this war, we were isolated, unimportant. Now we are partners, allies, teachers. That transformation happened because you had the courage to ask for our help. Kelrix gripped the human's hand firmly. And thank you for answering that request, for bringing everything that makes humanity unique to our defense. You could have said no, could have decided that an alien war was not your concern, but you came anyway. You fought for people you barely knew, risked your lives for a species you had just met. That generosity, that willingness to help others is just as impressive as your tactical creativity. Several hours later, the human fleet prepared to depart. Sullivan watched from his bridge as the Zorathian honor guard took up positions around them. Dozens of ships from a dozen different coalition species, all there to show respect, to say thank you in the way military forces understood best, with a formal escort, with ceremonial displays, with honor and recognition. Katie reported communications from the station. Sir, all coalition forces are broadcasting farewell messages. They are thanking us. Some are asking when humans will return. A few younger officers are saying they hope to train with us someday. Send our thanks. Tell them that humans never forget our friends. Tell them we will be back. And tell them that the galaxy is a better place because we all learned to work together. Different species, different perspectives, different ways of thinking. That diversity made us stronger, made victory possible.